Alright, hello everyone. My name is Ryan.MPG, and tonight I'll be talking about healthcare. Over the past couple of years, our nation has undoubtedly gone through economic turmoil. Without question, one of the biggest factors in our economy is healthcare. While many people have tried to solve this problem, there hasn't been really a clear-cut solution thus far. However, President Obama has devised a plan that will help our healthcare system substantially. It's a plan that would bring the best of what healthcare already offers and fix the things that it's not so well on, such as a growing deficit and loss of coverage. Therefore, my claim tonight is that President Obama's healthcare plan would have both a personal benefit and an economical benefit on our nation. And I'll be going over a few basic topics. Number one, that our current plan is ineffective. Number two, how the new plan would be better for the people and the economy. And number three is how we can achieve this. So number one, the problem. A major problem that our current system has is that many people don't have coverage. Now this can be for a lot of different reasons, such as people suffering with pre-existing illnesses or conditions, and they aren't able to get coverage. Also, it's largely related to cost. Some people are self-employed and can't afford it, or the cost may just be simply too high. And it's also stated that people having to afford their own health care, so they don't get it provided for their employer, it's 3 times more expensive to get health care on your own than it is from your employer. And President Obama stated in one of his speeches, we spend 1.5 times more per person on health care than any other country, but we aren't any healthier for it. And if we do nothing to slow these skyrocketing costs, we will eventually be spending more on Medicare and Medicaid than every other government program combined. So what's our problem? It's that we're overpaying for a system that we see no extra benefits for, and it's also a system that's going into the ground because it's predicted that by 2037, the money to pay for Medicare and Medicaid will run out. So now on to number two, the plan. The plan would cover 3 basic goals. 1, it would provide more security and stability to those who have health insurance. 2, it would provide insurance for those who don't have it. And 3, it would slow the growth of healthcare costs for family, businesses, and government. So you're asking, how does it create more security, more stability? It'll be against the law for insurance companies to deny you coverage or to lessen it anytime you get sick. They won't be able to place a cap on how much health care you receive during a given year or in your lifetime for that matter. And also there will be a limit placed on how much out-of-pocket expenses you can be charged. And they will be required to cover at no additional charge routine checkups so that again it's cutting down on your out-of-pocket expenses. Also, it will be against the law for insurance companies to deny you coverage for a pre-existing condition. So that's if you have security, how it helps you now. If you don't, or excuse me, if you have health care. If you don't, it'll offer you quality, affordable choices. You could get it if you lose your job, and you can't be turned down, basically. So if this were to pass, it would also cut down on the price. And if we were to cut down the price of health care by 1%, 1/10 of 1% each year, it would reduce our deficit by $4 trillion in the long term. That's just 1/10 of 1% for $4 trillion. And if we do nothing, the deficit will grow, more families will go bankrupt, more businesses will close, more Americans will lose their coverage when they're sick, and again, so this would be beneficial for the citizens. And then on to the third point is how we're able to do this. It would be through a new system, an insurance exchange. It's where people and businesses could come together in basically a big shopping network where citizens can choose the plan and the coverage that best suits them financially and for their health needs. And this will also be required for basic individuals to have health insurance, much like you have your driver's license. It would be a requirement. And businesses would also be required to offer you health insurance, so you get it through the business. The plan would not add one dime to the deficit. Most of it can be paid for by the savings that would be taken away from the current plan that's full of inefficiency and waste. And also it would be paid for by the revenues that insurance companies are gaining from the tens of millions of new customers. And so now I'm sure you were asking yourself, well, you know, why do I care about the healthcare system and how it works? Well, because each and every day, hundreds and millions of people die because they don't have health insurance, or because they can't get it, they can't afford it, anything like that. There are now more than 30 million American citizens without coverage, and one example here of an example of when the man's coverage was dropped in the middle of chemotherapy because his insurance company found he didn't report gallstones that he didn't even know he had. By the time he ended up dying from it because his coverage was dropped when he was sick. So, and right now, at the age of 25, you're then required to obtain insurance on your own, so you will no longer be under your parents' insurance plan. So, again, let's look at what I went over, is how our current program is flawed, the new plan and its benefits, and how we're able to do it. So just make sure you make a good decision today for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
And I'll just mention that in a couple of spots you sound like you are unaware of the fact that the health care plan that was proposed is passed and was signed by the President, so I think you need to talk about it in the present tense as opposed to a hypothetical. You do identify a claim. It really has two parts to it, and so that's a little problematic. The secondary claims are labeled okay, and so you've got a structure that you're going to follow. That's good. And you signpost those as you get to them. That's pretty solid. The problem that I see here is that we've got a lot of claims and not a lot of grounds to support them. The one piece of information that you have on costs comes from the President on what the current costs are and how that's going to affect the long-range budget proposal. After that, though, you've got a whole bunch of arguments about costs that are mostly assertions. For instance, you mentioned that the health care proposal can be paid for by cuts in the current system. But I don't get a source citation on that. There's not an explanation. How do you give 30 million people more coverage, no cap on their coverage, no limit to coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, and coverage for people who don't have coverage through their jobs, and reduce costs? There needs to be an explanation of that, and I don't think that you have a very clear one. You don't have any budget numbers from either the CBO or any other source citation on that particular thing, and I think that that's a little bit problematic. You mentioned deaths due to a lack of coverage in the last point, and what you've got is one example of a man who was denied coverage during his chemotherapy. We should get a source citation on that, because otherwise this is an apocryphal story and we don't really know how true it is. But let's assume, for instance, that it's true. Well, how many people are in those kinds of situations that are faced with that, that are being denied coverage because of those pre-existing conditions? Is the mortality rate, for instance, higher because of people not having coverage? Do people who don't have coverage they don't get treatment? I thought that's what Medicare and Medicaid were for, and if you're telling me that those don't work or that they're eventually going to run out of money, then that might be a reason to change it, and that's the argument that you start with originally, that it's going to be a cost issue. But then we got to get back to that cost issue, and you need more data on that particular point. So I got a lot of claims, but I don't have much proof on those claims, and I think that that's where the argument's a little bit thin. All right, thank you.